This is the third talk in the series, Building the Temple of Light. So most of you have heard the first two talks. So this is the third in the series. And this is actually entitled Building the Temple. So that's what I'm going to talk about this time. Well, building the temple. Well, Bacon's temple, he also, besides relating it to Solomon's temple, he refers to it as a pyramid, the pyramid of philosophy. And Bacon's philosophy, as he does explain, but you have to hunt for this explanation, explains it's a moral philosophy, which makes a huge difference in understanding what he's actually referring to. Bacon's philosophy is a moral philosophy. Philosophy as a word is from the Greek word philosophia, which means love or Sophia. And Sophia is the feminine aspect of divine wisdom, the wisdom of love, because God or divinity is love. So Sophia is the goddess or divine aspect of this wisdom of love. So that's very important to take on board, because Bacon took this very seriously. And this is what his whole project is for. Philosophers who are lovers of Sophia, the divine wisdom of love. As Bacon describes it, a philosopher is a wise servant and humble handmaid of Sophia, the mistress. So to give a quote from him, from his Advancement of Learning, "And if it be said that the cure of men's minds belongeth to sacred divinity, it is most true, but yet moral philosophy may be preferred unto her as a wise servant and humble handmaid." So what he's referring to as sacred divinity is Sophia, the divine wisdom. Now, a physical temple is built by practical masons, but a spiritual or soul temple is built by speculative Freemasons. Mason means builder, particularly a builder in stone. And the word free is from Sanskrit, free meaning love. So Freemasons are loving builders of the temple of light that expresses that love. You take that on board. It can apply to any of us. Any of us can do it, whether you belong to an organization calling itself Freemasonry or not. The temple also expresses wisdom, strength, and beauty, because, as it's said in Freemasonry, in the great teachings there, because wisdom is needed to design it, strength or intelligence to support it, and beauty to adorn it. And the word speculation refers to thinking, the thoughts of the mind. And they're all indications, and there are many of them, are that speculative Freemasonry was founded by Francis Bacon, its purpose being to build a temple of light in the human mind. Bacon points to this in his Advancement of Learning again, to quote, "For I am not raising a capital or pyramid to the pride of men, but laying a foundation in the human understanding for a holy temple after the model of the world. And surely, as nature createth brotherhood in families, and art's mechanical contract brotherhoods in commonalities, and the anointment of God superinduceth the brotherhood in kings and bishops, so in like manner there cannot be but a fraternity in learning and illumination, relating to that paternity which is attributed to God, who is called the Father of illuminations or lights." So there he's already pointing out what he's going to do, or has already done. Speculative Freemasonry describes itself as a beautiful or peculiar system of morality, veiled in allegory and illustrated by symbols. Moreover, Freemasonry is dedicated to charity, which Bacon describes as love in action, and he urges us to practice it as it imitates the work of God, whose work is love in action. Charity, love in action. the work that God works from beginning to end, as the Bible says. And to quote Bacon, in sum, I would advise all in general that they would take into serious consideration the true and genuine ends of knowledge, that they seek it not either for pleasure or contention or contempt of others, or for profit or fame, or for honour and promotion, or such like adulterate or inferior ends, but for the merit and emolument of life, and that they regulate and perfect the same in charity. Now, of course, it takes time to take all this on board, and most people who study Bacon, if they ever do study him, entirely miss really what he's saying. But this is the sort of thing that's needed if we're going to build a golden age of any sort. Now, the 1640 Advancement of Learning title page illustrates Bacon's pyramidal temple very well, including its symbolic form and how it is built. Okay, here's the 1640 Advancement of Learning title page. And after Bacon had died, a lot of things could be revealed which he kept quite private or secret during his life. And this is one of them. This is a wonderful title page that shows many, many things about his whole work he's talking about. But on this title page, you can see these two pyramids. And one of them is representing his pyramid of philosophy. And they're interesting pyramids. They're set on plinths. You can see the plinths there, which themselves are set on the books that Bacon describes the different stages of his great Instauration. And they in turn are set on another plinth. And each plinth is fundamentally a cube. So there's a bigger cube, then a smaller cube, and then you get a plinth on top forming a pillar, what's called a pillar. And if you look carefully, you'll see each of these pyramids is set on 3 ball bearings. Well, that's an immediate pointer to the fact that these pyramids have a triangular base. In other words, they're what's called true pyramids, really. And these three sides of the pyramid are actually very important in Bacon's description of the tripartite building of the temple and the overall design or makeup of the temple. So that's what I'm going to try to explain to you better for it. So if you look on the lower plinths of each pillar, you'll see a triangle there and a triangle the other side. And just to remind you, the right-hand pillar is, as you look at a picture like this, is like looking at another person. So the right-hand pillar is on your left-hand side as you look at it, and it's called the sun pillar. And the left-hand pillar, as it was called, is the pillar in shadow, and it's associated with the moon, symbolized by the moon. Sun pillar and moon pillar. Sun pillar is the right-hand pillar, the moon pillar is the left-hand pillar. I mean, there's great significance behind all this and symbolism, which you know. I'm sure you know most of this. So if you take this triangle here on the right-hand pillar, the sun pillar plinth, it actually describes the 3 stages of building the temple. So the first stage he calls history, the second stage poetry, and third stage he calls philosophy. History, from his point of view, is the material that we gather from nature. The material, and in terms of building a pyramid, you know, if you're a stonemason, that would be your stone material. You quarry the rock and extract your stone. And so the history is about the quarrying and collecting the stones in terms of temple building. Then poetry refers to the means of building the temple. And this refers to shaping, polishing, and raising the stones to build the temple as beautifully as you can. So poetry is the means to do this. And philosophy is the result. It's the temple itself. It's the result of what's being built or has been built. So there's three stages of building the temple, which he refers to as history, poesy, and philosophy. The material, the means, and the result. And this is built on the foundation stone of the universe. And that in tradition is also interpreted as referring to the whole universe, the whole of nature. Nature itself is the foundation stone. And in the foundation stone is contained all wisdom. So in other words, his pyramid he's building is based on or derived from nature, the nature of the world and the whole universe, in which can be found the divine wisdom or laws of God. The foundation stone in tradition is symbolized as a cube, so its surface is a square. So this is what you build the pyramid on, a square foundation, you could say. And on this, he's put a triangular-based pyramid. So to make the fit, he's got 3 ball bearings, which actually makes it movable as well. The pyramid of philosophy has 3 sides. So if we look at the triangle on the left-hand moon pillar, which is shown bigger here by the side, it actually describes the 3 types of philosophy or areas of study and knowledge that comprise the one philosophy. So there's natural philosophy making up one face, human philosophy another face, and divine philosophy the third face. Human philosophy he also describes as humanity, and divine philosophy Bacon describes also as natural theology. Just to quote Bacon, in philosophy, the contemplations of man do either penetrate unto God, or are circumferred to nature, or are reflected and reverted upon himself, out of which several inquiries there do arise 3 knowledges: divine philosophy, natural philosophy, and human philosophy or humanity. For all things are marked and stamped with this triple character of the power of God, the difference of nature, and the use of man. Now, like everything that Bacon says, you have to read it many times before you can take it all in, because he chooses his words very carefully. And some of the words we don't use much today, which makes it more difficult. But I'll say this quote again for you. In philosophy, the contemplations of man do either penetrate unto God, or are circumferred to nature, or are reflected and reverted upon himself, out of which several inquiries there do arise 3 knowledges: divine philosophy, natural philosophy, and human philosophy or humanity. For all things are marked and stamped with this triple character of the power of God, the difference of nature, and the use of man. Anyway, what it refers to is the pyramid of philosophy is a 3-sided pyramid. And a 3-sided pyramid is known as a tetrahedron. And this is one of the Platonic solids, which and this tetrahedron represents the fire element. So Bacon again has chosen it very carefully. The fire element to symbolize the pyramid of philosophy. And a pyramid, word pyramid, uses the ancient Greek word pyre, meaning fire, and it's described in the dictionary as a pile of combustible material set on fire, and fire produces light. So as you see, it's all carefully chosen. Now on this picture, you'll see that there are 2 pyramids shown, each of which actually shaped like an obelisk. An obelisk is a pillar of light, a sun pillar or a moon pillar, because light can be radiant or it can be reflective. And this symbolizes what Bacon calls the truth of being and truth of knowing, also known as the double truth in tradition. The ancient Egyptians symbolized it by the god and goddess Thoth and Ma'at. Thoth, the radiant wisdom, Ma'at, the reflective wisdom or light. Thoth and Ma'at. Symbols of these names actually crop up in the ciphers that you can find throughout Bacon's work and other work connected with it. Now, the right-hand pillar, the sun pillar, is actually representing the pyramid of divinity. And that's why it's the sun pillar of radiant truth. And wisdom is derived, in Bacon's terms, this pyramid of wisdom is wisdom derived from divine inspiration via the prophets and others, and recorded in sacred scriptures and holy writings, referred to by Bacon as sacred divinity or inspired theology or religion. So that is to him what this right-hand pillar of divinity represents. The recording of all the wisdom directly inspired via prophets and others who get inspired, truly inspired in that sort of way. And Bacon talks about inspiration as coming into the human heart like a holy breath breathed into our heart, bearing that wisdom, which then speaks to the mind, to illumine the mind. And then this left-hand pillar, the shadow pillar, is representing the moon pillar, representing knowledge of truth. So this is the real pyramid of philosophy. Represents the knowledge of wisdom derived from our experience of studying and practicing the wisdom acquired from nature's laws and divinely inspired teachings. That's how Bacon describes it. The knowledge of wisdom derived from our experience of studying and practicing the wisdom acquired from nature's laws and also divinely inspired teachings. Now, a lot of scientists, carried on and thought they were following what Bacon founded, but they forgot about referring to the divinely inspired teachings. In other words, they set up a very materialistic science, which is the mainstream science. But Bacon always saw his science or philosophy as not being mainstream, but going alongside it to help humanity, because it could only be actually practiced and so on by those who are morally true and dedicated to charity, which unfortunately cuts out some people, but it can include many, many others. Now, to quote Francis Bacon again, "Wherefore let it be observed that there be two principal duties and services besides ornament and illustration, which philosophy and human learning do perform to faith and religion. The one, because they are an effectual inducement to the exaltation of the glory of God, the other, because they minister a singular help and preservative against unbelief and error. For as our Saviour saith, you err, not knowing the scriptures, nor the power of God." That's a quote from Matthew chapter 22, verse 29. Bacon continues, "Laying before us two books or volumes to study, if we will be secured from error. First, the scriptures, revealing the will of God, and then the creatures expressing his power, whereof the latter is a key unto the former, not only opening our understanding to conceive of the true sense of the scriptures by the general notions of reason and rules of speech, but chiefly opening our belief in drawing us into a due meditation of the omnipotency of God, which is chiefly signed and engraven upon his works." And in another quote, it's a bit simpler. "The knowledge of man is as the waters, some descending from above and some springing from beneath. the one informed by the light of nature, the other inspired by divine revelation. The light of nature consisteth in the notions of the mind and the reports of the senses. So then, according to these two differing illuminations or originals, knowledge is first of all divided into divinity and philosophy. Divinity and philosophy, the two pyramids or two pillars to the whole temple of knowledge. Now, to go on further, each pyramid, divinity and philosophy, has 4 levels. So here I'm trying to show it on this title page again. We take the pyramid of divinity first. That's the pillar on the right-hand side, the sun pillar. This is referring to the Holy Scriptures. And it's said that there are 4 ways that wisdom is presented and can be read or understood. This is in the Hebrew tradition. They refer to these 4 levels as PRDS, standing for Peshat, Ramaz, Darash, and Sod. The P or Peshat means the literal reading and understanding of it. The second level is R or Ramaz, and it's referred to, it means elusive. Elusive, that's like allegory and so on like that. And it usually refers to morals. And then the third level, D or Darash, translates as homiletic, and that's the more scientific level. And then the final level is Sod, which simply means magic. It also means that which you can't actually explain in words. You have to do it. All speaking and so on is finished by then. And this is paralleled by, on the left-hand pillar of philosophy, the moon pillar of philosophy, by 4 levels again, which Bacon groups into 2 stages. The 2 stages he calls physics, and above that, metaphysics. And each of those stages is divided into 2. For knowledge, and to quote him, for knowledges are as pyramids, whereof history is the basis. So of natural philosophy, the basis is natural history. The stage next the basis is physique. The stage next the vertical point is metaphysique. As for the vertical point, the work that God maketh from the beginning to the end, the summary law of nature, we know not whether man's inquiry can attain unto it. So there he's referring to history, the foundation, and then physics and metaphysics, the two stages. And then the vertical point or apex of the pyramid represents the summary law of nature or the universe. Summary means universal law, and he explains this in his writings as divine love in action, the work that God works from beginning to end. And the 4 levels he refers to as material, efficient, formal, and final. Material and efficient at the physics level, formal and final belong to metaphysics. So these go along matching PRDS. And PRDS is the way we get into paradise. Our word paradise comes from that, PRDS. If we achieve the S, get into S, we go into paradise and we create paradise. And that's what Bacon's aiming for us to be able to do exactly that, build a paradise on earth or wherever we're going to be. So these 4 levels, material, efficient, formal, and final. Material causes relate to the element earth, efficient to the element water, formal to the element air, and final to the element fire. As I said, the vertical point is love in action, the summary or universal law, which scientists are still looking for. But it's around them all the time, if only they had eyes to see and sense to understand it. That is love. Love exists everywhere. Now, what he calls poesy is poetry. And this is what creates and raises the stones to build the pyramid. And there are three types of poetry that he talks about, again dividing poetry into three. It's threesome again. And the first he refers to being narrative or heroic, which explains useful for raising the mind and exalting the spirit. The second type of poetry, calls dramatical or representative. And he says this brings the world upon the stage, was intended by the ancients to instruct the minds of men unto virtue. And he says he intends to go the way of the ancients. So there's drama for you, the theatre. That's well, straight away it's an explanation of why there are the Shakespeare plays, straight away. And then the third level, he refers to as allusive or parabolical. And he describes this as including fables, parables, mythology, and most of all, the mysteries. Now, the temple mysteries of initiation are the means by which the temple is built. This is the key to it all, really. And he gives an example, Solomon's temple. The Solomon's temple itself is also copying the ideas and so on of the Egyptian pyramid of Thoth, or truth, as the Egyptian pyramids were called. And the builders of such temples are speculative Freemasons. And really we're building the temple of our own soul. So by going through the process that's referred to as the process of Freemasonry, you eventually symbolically die. And in dying, you transmute that good part of yourself. Your heart is set on fire and you produce the light. So part of you transmutes into light, and that light creates a higher form. And that higher form is known as the celestial or spiritual soul. And that's what's called the Rosicrucian level. So Freemasons produced the Rosicrucians, as it were. And Rosicrucians were referred to him in one of his great presentations of this as the Knights of the Helmet, or spear shakers. And their intention is to bring order out of chaos, light out of darkness, knowledge out of ignorance, and virtue out of vice. But you can't be a Rosicrucian without being a Freemason first, in the true sense of the word. So this chart is to show you the whole cycle of initiation, the degrees of initiation as a cycle. And it's about getting your stone, your rough ashlar, cut from a quarry, you shape it, you polish it to make the perfect ashlar. And when it's perfect, you can raise it up and place it in the right position to build your temple of light. And so this is the symbolism of building the temple as a Freemason. And we ourselves are those stones. We produce the stones. We cut them from the quarry of our own lower self, and we have to shape it, polish it until it's perfectly true in all ways. And then through the death process, which is actually setting your heart on fire with love in action, then you can raise it up and place it in your temple. It becomes light, it becomes a stone of light, in other words, and it creates your celestial soul. And there are three main degrees in doing this. So you start off with the impulse to get it going. It can be usually an initiation, it's inspiration. You want to do something good. And then you go into the first degree where you develop your goodwill, your desire to do good, your goodwill, will to do good, God's will, in other words, the first degree. And that's called making. It's also referred to in Freemasonry as the entered apprentice. Then the next stage after that is the second degree, and that's good thought, developing good thought or understanding. And this is referred to as passing. And then the third degree comes after that, is putting your thoughts into action. So that refers to good action, love in action. And this is referred to as raising, because there you're perfecting your stone and ready to raise it up. But first there has to be a death. You have to undergo a death before that actual raising happens. And with the death and the resurrection comes afterwards, that's called exalting up to the higher level. And this is all based again, if you like, as a reflection of paradise, going into paradise, PRDS. So the reading of the scriptures, the literal level, P, R, the elusive level, D, the homiletic or scientific, and S, the magic, which is love in action, produces magic. That is the magic, real magic, true magic, love in action. And the Greek society and other societies were actually modeled on this. You know, this wisdom is ancient. It's not just created by Bacon. This is ancient wisdom. He's bringing through for us to use, to create something wonderful in the future, golden age, after we've been through the present challenges and so on that the world's undergoing. But like the phoenix has to build its funeral pyre, as it were, and burn itself up, and then it transmutes, it dies, as it were, symbolically dies, and then resurrects in a new form, a resurrected form. And that's what the world, I think, is undergoing at the moment, certainly humanity anyway. Well, human society was modeled in the past on these four stages. So there's the mundane life, people just living a mundane life. Then there's the religious life, which religion provides for people with great ceremonies and things like that. And that's based on faith, you know, belief. You just believe and you want to do good. You've got good desires and so on, to generate the good desires and good feelings. And then the next comes after that, the academies, what Plato called the academy. And that's the learning phase, when he's trying to learn about these things and how to do better and getting your plan for action. And then the mysteries themselves were the love in action. You're actually doing it, doing the good work in the mysteries, the mystery of life itself. So we live a mystery. We don't just sit back and watch it. A mystery is to be lived in and participated in. That's what a mystery means. It's different to just a simple drama. Now, the culmination of all these degrees of initiation is symbolized by the death and then the resurrection. And in Freemasonry and in the ancient tradition, it's symbolized by the discovery of a crypt beneath the ruined temple being symbolic of your own death. And then you go into yourself and you discover this crypt in your heart, and you find there the lost word, what's called the lost word, the word of wisdom, the truth. And you bring it out, you raise it, and that's the resurrection. In the Dionysian mystery, it's referred to as rescuing the heart of Zagreus, So lost wisdom on a bigger scale is the wisdom buried in the heart of nature itself, in the heart of the universe, which we all can find. If we search for it, we can all find, and then we have to learn how to draw it forth in the right way. We draw it forth by living it, by descending into the depths, into the darkness, finding that truth in that darkness and bringing it out so it can be understood and lived. And when we're in ourselves, when we find it and it's released from the human heart, it's raised to the mind, and then illumination or knowledge of truth occurs. But for this to occur, there must be love in action. It must be living in truth for this to occur. Love in action is living in truth. And it's the discovery of this lost word that enables the temple to be built and completed. As I've said before, each raised stone represents a resurrected or illuminated part of the soul, the human soul. And this resurrected, illumined part of the soul then is known as the Rosicrucian. And it represents our higher immortal soul, the celestial soul, the immortal soul. A person, any one of us then, it's then both a Freemason, the natural soul, and a Rosicrucian, a spiritual soul. We have both these at the same time. We're mortal and immortal. Our natural soul is mortal, but our spiritual soul is immortal. We become the mortal immortal. We are both at the same time. And we can communicate between the two. And we continue on being so. And this is where the lighted candle I always find is so useful, because you have your lighted candle, there you've got the flame is giving birth to this light, and the light shines out completely unlimited, representing the immortal light-filled self, whereas the candle, including its flame, is limited and represents the mortal natural self. But without the natural self, there wouldn't be the light. Each needs the other, got to have the other. The light itself is generating a heat which keeps the candle burning. And so it goes. So it goes on. It's like a circle. Both are needed for life to be well lived. Now, in what's called the Holy Royal Arch degree, it's also referred to in the 7-degree system as the 4th degree of Freemason, where the Freemason becomes the Rosicrucian. The Holy Royal Arch degree, the truth that you find down in the crypt is symbolized as an ark. You find the Ark of the Covenant there, using the Hebrew terms. And this contains the Torah, the rod, which can turn into a serpent, and the pot of manna. 3 things again. The Torah, usually represented as on a scroll, although in the true sense it should be on tablets, Moses's tablets. The Torah, the rod that can turn into a serpent, it's the same as the caduceus, and the pot of manna, which is another symbol of the Holy Grail. And these 3 represent wisdom, the Torah, intelligence, which is the rod or serpent, and knowledge, the pot of manna, and refers to, again in Freemasonic terms, wisdom to design, strength to support, beauty to adorn. And these are all summed up in terms of what's called the Golden Triangle, which is also brought up, or is on the top of the ark. And all this represents the lost word which has been found, raised up into the light. And then the lost word brought up into the light, it's then joined with what's already known, and the word is spoken forth, and the temple can be built. Because the word is the wisdom which has the whole design of the temple. So without that architectural design, you can't build the temple. So that's what it means. And then the temple can be built after that. but it's also more than just the wisdom design, it's also the strength, the power and material and so on that's needed. Now, Bacon never actually produced a picture, or people didn't produce a picture for him of an actual temple, but this whole mystery is shown in another title page of his. And this is his New Atlantis, when it first was published. It has this emblem on the title page with the motto, "Hidden truth brought forth by time." So this is symbolizing the same thing, bringing truth out of a cave or a well of darkness into the light. And here time is shown as the Hierophant, drawing truth out. So the time can also refer to each one of us going down into the well, finding that truth and bringing it out. Now, the pyramid is built on the foundation stone. And the surface of the foundation stone, which is a cube, so the surface is a square, and it's called, in tradition, the mosaic floor. And this is referring to the stone tablet of Moses. The stone tablet of Moses is the same as the foundation stone, inscribed with the wisdom, the laws or commandments, as they're referred to, laws or commandments of God. So that's what the mosaic floor really means. But of course, it's also, you also think of it made up of squares, like mosaic, laying different coloured stones or so on to make a mosaic pattern on the floor. It's on the mosaic floor that the mysteries are practiced, by means of which the temple is built. So now I'm going to take you through some of the deeper meanings of this. So here's a picture I've made of this mosaic floor. And first of all, you see it's square. Square means it has 4 equal sides, each at 90 degrees or square to each neighbouring side. 4 equal sides with 4 equal angles. So number 4 is very important in this. And then this floor is divided into 10 by 10 squares, 10 by 10, 10 one way, 10 the other. So altogether makes 100 squares. Now the number 10 represents what's called the tree of life, with its 10 sephiroth or ciphers, numbers 1 to 10. So number 10 itself represents the tree of life, which is all wisdom. That represents the divine wisdom. And with 10 by 10, you've got the tree of life times the tree of life. It's a way of referring to the double truth. Double truth can either be tree of life plus tree of life, or it can be tree of life times tree of life. Here it's shown in this way, 10 by 10, one tree of life times another tree of life, the double truth. So I said it refers to the 10 sephiroth of the tree of life. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This is the diagram that's usually shown of the tree of life. And it's seen, I'm giving it to you what's called a panim, or face-to-face view. So it's the same way as you'd see a symbolic picture like you've just seen of the advancement of learning, like seeing somebody else face-to-face. So you're seeing truth face-to-face, in other words, with this. Many of the books you'll buy showing the tree of life will show it from what's called the ahor, or a back view. You see truth from the back view. Like Moses, when he went up to Mount Sinai, he saw God from the back. And that's how, in Kabbalah, that's how it's shown to you to start with, in what's called the lesser mysteries. But when you go to the greater mysteries, which are the messianic or Christ mysteries, then you see truth face to face. So heraldry and most symbolic pictures show you face-to-face view. I mention all this because it's so important, because do people still get confused about this? And it's only to do with perception. You have to know whether you're seeing something from the back or from the front. Now, in this tree of life, you've also got the double truth, because God in the Bible, Hebrew Bible, is called Elohim. Elohim is a plural word, and it means Abba, Ama, father, mother, which includes everything else. And Abba, Ava become heaven and earth. And then between them, they create everything that manifests themselves. They manifest themselves through their own love making. It's all about love making. The whole universe is about love making, making love, and generating the child, and so on. And so in this, you've got the double truth hidden. So there is male and female in this. There are different ways one can see this, but one of the simple ways is that this is the tree of life. But it's also the tree of knowledge, because the tree of knowledge is simply knowledge of the tree of life. So you see this, the tree of life, without any knowledge at all. That's the alpha, the beginning. Wisdom exists, but you don't know it. And then you get to the omega, and suddenly you know the wisdom. So it's the same tree of life, but this time you know it. Double truth, two ways of seeing it, just as two ways of seeing it from the front or from the back. But at the same time, it's also male and female. So that the alpha tree of life is male and female, and the omega or knowledge tree of life, tree of knowledge, is also male and female. So you could say they're actually not just a double truth, but four truths here, four truths. And you find this whole idea of the two or the four comes out in the story of the Gemini, for instance, and other classical stories like that. Now, going back to the mosaic floor. So on the mosaic floor, the tree of life is numbers 1 to 10, can be read in 4 different directions. That's to say, from the 4 sides, with 1 and 10 being in the border. So you can read it downwards with number 1 up there, number 10 down there. And there are 10 ways across you can do that. Or you can read it sideways, starting with number 1 on this side, going to the other side, and so on right across the board. Or you can do it from the bottom being number 1 and the top here on the diagram being 10. Or you can do it number 1 here, this side, and number 10 that side. So in other words, there are 4 ways that you can read the tree of life in that. And each of those ways can be multiplied 10 times. Now the border itself, which I've colored blue for a reason, the heavenly blue represents spiritual wisdom and the universe. The border actually represents God itself, Elohim, which is Abba, Ama, father, mother. And they, as I said, they become heaven and earth. Heaven is represented by number 1 on the tree of life, and earth is represented by number 10 on the tree of life. So they're the father, mother. They are really one. And in their lovemaking, they're the all. Elohim are the all. That's another way of referring to them. Abba, Ama, the double A, the all, because they're one. They're one A, and yet can appear as 2 A's, heaven and earth. But in their lovemaking between them, they create the child, which is represented by the 8x8 chessboard in between. The child is the cosmos of light. Now, traditionally, you put the signs of the zodiac in the border, because here, signs of the zodiac associated with the ecliptic circle or sun's path, which defines our particular universe or cosmos. And then you go beyond the ecliptic and you're in outer space. You go beyond it into the divine being, Abba Ama. So the signs of the zodiac are put there representing this ecliptic or sun's path. And the cosmos inside 8 by 8 squares is the chessboard. And it represents the world of individual souls. Whereas the 10 by 10 refers to the all, the total universe, the 8 by 8 is the cosmos made up of lots of individual souls, the world of individual souls. So the game of chess is actually the game of life played by individual souls in this cosmos. Now, in the mysteries, the border is said to be tessellated. That means it has 4 tassels at the corners, and the tassels are connected by a blue cord that goes all the way around the outside. The blue cord surrounding it represents the whole border, really. It's a tassellated border, 4 tassels. The border itself is made up of 36 squares containing the 12 zodiac signs. So there are 3 squares per zodiac sign. And these represent the 3 theological virtues, and 3 theological virtues represent the wisdom. And these 3 virtues, theological virtues, are faith, hope, and charity. So you get faith, hope, and charity embodied all the way around in the border. And the tassels represent the 4 cardinal virtues. This is equivalent to what's called strength or intelligence, which holds, protects, and so on. And these 4 cardinal virtues are known as fortitude, justice, temperance, and prudence, as I show in this picture. And the whole setup with the zodiac signs and where the justice, fortitude, and so on is, and the north, south, east, and west, is a setup as everything was in terms of time about 2,000 years ago. Things have moved on now, so things will be slightly different, but this is how it's known still in tradition. And there's a reason for it being like this. Now, there are also what's known as the 7 contrary virtues. And it's good to know these too. Contrary means contrary to the vice, virtue contrary to the vice, by means of which vice is defeated until it exists no more. In other words, light or virtue illuminates the darkness, which is vice, and turns the darkness into light. It dissolves the darkness. Light dissolves darkness. Light dissolves the shadows. So the 7 contrary virtues, the first 3 are kindness against envy, equivalent to faith, humility against pride, description of hope, and liberality against greed, description of charity. And the cardinal virtues shown in chastity against lust, which is describing fortitude, patience against anger, describing what real justice is. We have the patience to be fair and so on like that, and don't get angry about it. Then abstinence against gluttony, which is temperance, and diligence against sloth, which is prudence. So all these ideas and wisdom is contained there in the chess, in the mosaic floor. Then we come to the chess pieces, the chessboard and chess pieces. Well, the chessboard is made up of black and white squares. Black and white represent again the double truth. And then in terms of the pieces, there are 16 white pieces and 16 black pieces, 32 pieces in all. Now this is the complete number of the tree of life, which represents Elohim or God, because the tree of life is made up of 10 Sephiroth plus 22 pathways connecting the Sephiroth together. So 10 plus 22 gives you 32 degrees. So in a subtle way, you've got these two sets of pieces of the chess set representing this 32 degrees. Each side contains 16 chess pieces, and these are paired, making 8 pairs. I don't know if you thought about this before. This is terribly important. 8 pairs of chess pieces, because everything is male and female. So each pair is male and female, because man is created male and female in the likeness of God, which is Elohim, Abba, Ema. And in addition, each side, like whether black or white, contains 2 levels within it, a level of aristocrats and a level of commoners. The aristocrats represent the Rosicrucians, and there are 4 pairs of those, and the commoners, described as pawns, represent the Freemasons, and there are 4 pairs of those. And these relate to the tree of life. So here, put on the tree of life, how it goes. So there are 4 sub-levels of aristocrats who are the Rosicrucians. First of all is the sovereign level, made up of the king and queen. Then you've got 2 bishops. You've got 2 castles, which represent the nobles, because a noble has a castle. And you've got 2 knights, male and female. Each of them are male and female. So the Christian church obviously rejected this at one point, but hopefully it's getting back to how it's meant to be. Male and female bishop, male and female noble, and male and female knights, as they're called. And they represent these sephira. The king and queen represent sephira 2 and 3, which together is knowledge place. The bishop represents sephira 4, which is mercy. The noble represents sephira 5, which is the judgment or perception. And the knight represents sephira 6, which is the beauty on the tree of life. And to enter that, you have to become first a knight, then a noble, then a bishop, and then you become a sovereign. And that's the path of initiation up the tree of life. But before that, to even reach that level, you've got to go through the commoners level, which is the Freemasons. So again, to go through this, the Master Mason is the highest level of the Masons, Freemasons or commoners. Master Mason represents sephira 7, known as victory, but it refers to, well, it can be translated in other ways. Number 8 is the fellow craft. And number 9 is the entered apprentice. And then number 10 at the bottom is the candidate for initiation. And again, these are male and female. So they're in the chessboard, they're called pawns. 4 pairs of pawns representing those. And by this means that the temple of light or pyramid of philosophy is raised, stone by stone, degree by degree. It's a mystery that produces knowledge or illumination. an act of love, because all things in the universe is divinely an act of love. I'll stop there. There. Well, I hope you've managed to take it and enjoyed what I've presented for you.